They called it a routine briefing. 3 in the morning, a cold room where power doesn't sleep. The clock ticked like a metronome for betrayal, and under the sterile light, a single file rested on the table. Yours, not a stack, not a collection of reports, just one page with your name stamped across it like a quiet execution. You weren't there to defend yourself. You weren't even awake. But while the nation turned in its sleep, the people you trusted the most were deciding how your story would end. They used your loyalty as evidence, your silence as guilt. Every favor you ever did became a thread in the rope they used to hang you. The man who shook your hand that afternoon, he was the same one who pushed your file forward when no one else would. The woman who swore she had your back didn't even make eye contact when they signed the paper. They called it protocol. You'd call it betrayal if you still believed in words. But betrayal isn't loud. It's a whisper in a boardroom. It's a nod exchanged between men who smile too easily. It's the sound of your name being erased by people you once bled for. When the news broke, it wasn't rage you felt. It was disbelief. You scrolled through headlines that spoke of you like a stranger. The photos they chose made you look colder, smaller, guilty. The comments underneath were the real verdict. He had it coming, never trust the quiet one. They didn't just take your reputation, they took your reflection. Every mirror became a crime scene. Every shadow looked like judgment. But here's what they didn't understand. They were building something in you, something primitive, a silence with teeth. In the days that followed, your phone stopped ringing. The laughter from your so-called friends evaporated. Even your home felt different, rooms too quiet, air too heavy. You replayed every conversation, every handshake, wondering when the blade was first sharpened. You'd always thought betrayal would come from enemies. You were wrong. It comes from familiarity, from the people who know exactly where to aim. You didn't sleep much after that. You started hearing the faint echo of their voices when you closed your eyes, not words, just the rhythm of deceit. But beneath the humiliation, something else began to stir. Pain became clarity. The noise of the world faded until only one thing remained, the realization that no one was coming to save you. The moment they turned on you, they freed you. Because now there was nothing left to protect, nothing left to lose. You looked around and saw the truth. Every empire is built on betrayal. Every great rise begins with exile. And while they celebrated your downfall, you were memorizing every detail of the fire they started. The temperature, the scent of smoke, the exact sound of your name being burned alive. You didn't fight back, not yet. You disappeared. Let them think you broke, let them believe they won. That's the mistake all betrayers make. They confuse silence with surrender. They never notice the man who stops defending himself. They never see the shift in his eyes. But one day they will. Because the same hand they used to sign your ruin will tremble when they see your shadow again. And when they do, they'll remember this night. The file, the light, the silence. The moment they buried you. They thought you'd beg. They thought you'd collapse. But you didn't. You stood still, watched the empire rot from the inside, and waited for the echo to come back around. Because betrayal isn't the end. It's the blueprint. And every scar they gave you, every lie, every cut, is just another line in the story they'll never be able to rewrite. The fall doesn't happen in a moment. It happens in whispers, in the way people stop calling, in how their eyes flicker away when they see your name. You start noticing the quiet first, not the peace kind, but the kind that feels like a grave being sealed. You used to have noise, messages, meetings, movement. Now there's just the hum of the refrigerator at 3 a.m. and the glow of a screen you don't want to look at anymore. The world keeps spinning without you, and that's the part that hurts the most. How easily it moves on. You stare at the walls like they'll answer for what they took, but walls don't care. Neither does the world. You tell yourself it's temporary, that people will remember who you are, but they don't. They remember the story, the one told about you, not by you. And the story spreads faster than truth ever could. The betrayal doesn't come from strangers. It comes from the ones who once said your name with warmth. Now they use it like a warning, like poison. You check your phone, no messages. You refresh your email, nothing. Every notification that doesn't come feels heavier than the ones that do. You start to fade in your own reflection. The mirror doesn't lie, but it doesn't help either. It just shows the version of you the world stopped believing in. Sleep stops coming. Nights turn into a strange kind of theater. Shadows moving, mind replaying, heart begging for silence. You count the cracks on the ceiling just to keep from counting the people who left. You stop talking because you start realizing no one listens unless you're winning. You stop explaining because truth sounds weak when you're losing. The room feels smaller, colder. Time drips like water from a broken faucet, each second a reminder that you're still here, but barely. You try to pray, but even God feels like he's scrolling past your name. You wonder if the punishment is deserved, or if this is just the universe showing you what solitude really means. Some nights you want to scream, not out of pain, but out of confusion. How can betrayal come so easily to those who swore loyalty? You replay every conversation, every handshake, every promise that now feels like a setup. And the realization comes, they never betrayed you to hurt you. They betrayed you to survive. You were the sacrifice that made their lives easier. Your fall became their insurance. And deep down you understand it, even if it burns. Because that's what humans do when the fire starts. They throw someone else in first. Days blur, food loses taste, music loses meaning. The world outside looks the same, but you're not part of it anymore. You're a ghost in daylight, invisible but still breathing. That's when you start hearing it, that quiet voice in the back of your head. It doesn't comfort you, it mocks you. It asks the questions you've been avoiding. Who are you without validation? What's left when your name no longer buys you attention? You have no answer, not yet, but that voice stays, it grows. It whispers through the cracks in your mind like smoke, like prophecy. And in that stillness, something shifts. The pain stops echoing and starts sharpening. The silence stops suffocating and starts teaching. You begin to understand this isn't punishment, it's purification. The world took everything that was borrowed, everything built on applause and approval, and left you with only what's real, yourself. The fall wasn't the end, it was the initiation. The universe stripped you bare not to break you, but to remind you that power doesn't begin when people believe in you. It begins when you stop needing them to. The mirror doesn't lie, but it doesn't save you either. It shows you the wreckage without mercy. The hollow eyes, the sleepless skin, the tremor in your jaw from nights spent replaying every betrayal. You stand there watching what's left of you after the world stripped you bare. No titles, no validation, just the echo of your own breathing and the faint hum of a life that forgot your name. You stare, waiting for something familiar to look back, but the reflection feels foreign. A stranger forged from loss, caught between who you were and what you must become. You remember when the mirror once comforted you, when it reflected the version of you that still believed in fairness and loyalty, in people meaning what they said. That version died quietly, buried under every unanswered message, every forced smile, every betrayal dressed as advice. What's left isn't pretty, but beauty was never the goal. The goal now is survival. You trace the outline of your reflection, and for the first time, you see the truth: no one is coming. Not the friends who clapped when you were winning, not the ones who disappeared when the lights went out. The cavalry isn't late, it was never sent. That realization cuts deeper than any blade, because now every comfort feels like a lie, every promise feels like a setup. You start to understand why predators move in silence, why kings wore masks even among their own. You've been feeding wolves who only smiled to show teeth. You gave loyalty to those who traded it for convenience. And yet here you stand, breathing. That alone should terrify them, because broken things are quiet, but they're also sharp. The kind of sharp that cuts through illusions, the kind that learns patience, precision, and revenge disguised as evolution. The mirror starts to shift. It's no longer glass, it's judgment. It's asking what you'll do with what's left. You can stay a ghost of the person who waited for apologies that never came. Or you can burn the version of you that begged to be understood. The fire won't ask if you're ready. It'll just consume until only clarity remains. You wipe the fog from the glass, and the eyes that stare back aren't pleading anymore. They're calculated, calm, cold, a storm condensed into silence. You've seen enough false light to finally understand the beauty of darkness. It tells the truth without pretending to care. You start to notice details you ignored before. The way pain doesn't hurt the same anymore. The way fear lost its voice. The way you move slower now, not from weakness, but control. Every heartbeat sounds like strategy. Every inhale, a reminder that you don't need validation to exist. You were waiting for permission to rise, when all you needed was permission to stop waiting. The mirror doesn't show a victim anymore. It shows a weapon still learning its reach. They'll say you changed. They'll call it arrogance, bitterness, ego. Let them. They're not supposed to understand what it costs to rebuild from nothing. They only see the surface, not the excavation beneath it. You'll walk past them one day, and they won't recognize you, and that will be your quiet victory. Because the new you doesn't crave acknowledgement, it commands it. The reflection no longer mocks you, it salutes you. The war isn't over, but the soldier has finally arrived. The mirror stays still, and for the first time, you don't look away. You nod once to no one but yourself. Because this isn't self-love, it's self-respect sharpened into steel. The kind that doesn't ask the world to see your worth. It makes them feel it. You don't whisper revenge. You breathe purpose. And the reflection, once your enemy, now smiles like it knows the secret you've become. The grind doesn't begin with noise. It begins in silence. The kind that hums beneath your ribs while the world sleeps. You wake before the light, not because you want to, but because something inside you refuses to die quietly. The betrayal still echoes, but now it's fuel. You don't crave revenge anymore. You crave precision. Every action, every repetition, every drop of sweat becomes a word in a language only the broken understand. You start to move like someone who has nothing left to lose. And that's when you become dangerous. Your mornings are rituals now. Cold water, empty stomach, heavy silence. You've stripped away everything soft, everything that once begged to be loved. There's no applause, no witness, just you and the task. You fail over and over until failure stops meaning anything. You've stopped chasing motivation, you built systems instead. Your body obeys before your mind even argues. You've learned that mastery isn't born from talent, it's carved from repetition. Every scar becomes scripture, every mistake a weapon. They don't see you, they think you disappeared. But you're still here, deeper underground, in a place where comfort can't follow. You burn the bridges behind you, not out of anger, but clarity. You know now, the path forward demands sacrifice. Sleep feels optional. Hunger becomes background noise. Pain, it's no longer an obstacle. It's a signal that you're alive. You stop reacting to life and start sculpting it. You count progress in scars, in minutes stolen from comfort. In the parts of you that die and never return, your room becomes a temple, the desk an altar. Every note you write, every rep you hit, every plan you build, an offering to the version of you that refused to stay weak. You learn to love monotony. It's pure, it's brutal, it's honest. The grind strips you bare until only essence remains. No ego, no noise, just movement. When exhaustion whispers that it's enough, you remind it you've been buried before. You know how to breathe without air. There's a madness that comes with this, a quiet one. Not the kind that screams, but the kind that sharpens. You start to hear your thoughts like orders. Eat less, speak less, work more. Watch everything, say nothing. You begin to study people, their patterns, their fears. The world becomes data. Emotions turn into tools. You realize that while everyone seeks comfort, the few who embrace pain rule them. You've stopped chasing success. You're becoming inevitable. You walk differently now, slower, heavier, measured. People sense something but can't name it. It's control. The kind that comes from surviving storms without witnesses. You've turned betrayal into blueprint, heartbreak into hierarchy. The same silence that once suffocated you now protects you. You've learned the ancient law. Power doesn't come to the loud, it bows to the consistent. Night falls again, and you're still at the table. The same chair, the same dim light, the same heartbeat rhythm against the clock. But it's different now. The work is cleaner, colder, more surgical. You no longer seek approval. You seek alignment. Every action, every breath, every decision now orbits a single truth. You were never meant to be ordinary. You were meant to rebuild yourself from ashes and make the world question how you're still standing. The grind isn't punishment anymore. It's purification, a ritual that burns weakness into wisdom. The ghosts of betrayal still watch, but they no longer haunt. They serve. Every ounce of pain they gave you, you turned it into fire. And as you exhale into the dark, there's a calm that only warriors know. The work continues, the world sleeps, and you keep building in silence. They thought the fire would end you, that the smoke would choke you silent, that the ashes would scatter what was left of your name. But pain didn't bury you, it baptized. Every lie they whispered became kindling. Every door they slammed became oxygen. You stopped asking why and started sharpening how. Your nights turned longer, your heartbeat slower, measured. You trained yourself to hear patterns in betrayal, to read intent in silence. You stopped praying for peace and started preparing for war, not the kind that needs weapons, but the kind that builds them inside your mind. The world took everything soft from you, so you rebuilt with steel. You learned that power doesn't roar, it hums, quiet and steady. In those who've been broken enough to stop pretending, the ones who've walked through humiliation without flinching, who've tasted despair so bitter it rewired their tongue. They called you obsessed, they called you cold. But obsession is what happens when survival refuses to die. You weren't chasing victory anymore, you were studying it. You stopped craving the applause of those who never clapped for your wounds. You started tracking your own pulse, calibrating your emotions like weapons systems. You found beauty in discipline, in repetition, in the slow bleed of mastery. They mocked your silence because they didn't understand it was your strategy. You disappeared not to hide, but to reload. You studied the same people who left you behind, memorized their tactics, their weaknesses, their tells. You realized most people talk in circles to avoid meeting themselves in the mirror. You stopped circling. You cut through. The things that once scared you became predictable. Fear lost its face. Doubt lost its voice. Every insult, every betrayal, every failure, they didn't vanish. You carried them in your bloodstream like data, decoding human nature until you knew how to move unseen. You turned endurance into language, suffering into intuition. Pain became your translator, teaching you how to read truth in discomfort. You learned to thrive in places others suffocate. The nights no one saw became your laboratory. The weight you carried became gravity, keeping you grounded when others drifted. You moved through life like smoke, formless, untouchable, everywhere and nowhere at once. You no longer needed validation. You became your own witness. Every scar now held a story, not a defeat, but of calculation. They thought the silence meant surrender, but silence was your camouflage. You watched, you waited, you gathered strength in fragments, discipline here, awareness there, revenge in the form of evolution. They laughed while you rebuilt. They relaxed while you recalibrated. You let them, because you knew what was coming. You weren't planning a comeback. You were constructing inevitability. And when you stepped out, it wasn't loud. It was seismic, a quiet shift in air pressure, a change in energy no one could explain. Now, when they see you, they feel it before they understand it. The shift, the weight, the unspoken warning in your eyes that says, you should have never doubted silence. You walk differently now, measured, patient, unbothered, because real power doesn't announce itself. It watches, it waits, it strikes once, and when it does, it doesn't need validation. It leaves echoes. They still whisper about the fire that was supposed to consume you. They don't realize you became it. You walk back into the same world that once spat you out. The air feels different now, heavier, quieter. The same corridors that once echoed with your humiliation now fall silent at the sound of your steps. You don't need a grand entrance. You are the entrance. The whispers die mid-sentence as eyes follow you. The ghosts they buried, now standing among the living. The difference is simple. Back then, you came to prove yourself. Now, you've come to confirm what they already fear, that survival wasn't mercy, it was preparation. Every detail feels surgical. The hum of fluorescent lights, the ticking clock, the faint static in the air, all synchronized like a pulse beneath your calm exterior. They still wear the same suits, the same smiles, the same shallow certainty. But beneath their eyes, something trembles. Recognition. They sense it before they admit it. The quiet violence behind your composure. The way you occupy the room without asking permission. They used to talk over you. Now they wait for you to speak, and when you don't, the silence cuts deeper than any accusation. Your file is back on the table, the same file they used to condemn you, stripped and rewritten, now stamped with approval. The president doesn't look up, not yet, but he knows. Everyone does. Your name no longer carries controversy. It carries consequence. You don't smile. Power doesn't perform. It observes. You let them squirm in the quiet. Let them drown in the realization that the person they tried to erase learned how to move without needing to be seen. You became the shadow that controls the light. They think this is your victory. They're wrong. This is your return, not as vengeance, but as equilibrium. You didn't come back to settle scores. You came to remind them what balance cost. Every betrayal you endured was an investment. Every silence you suffered was a down payment on this moment. You understand now. Pain wasn't punishment, it was currency. You traded it for precision, patience, and control, and now you spend it ruthlessly. As the meeting begins, voices rise around you. Numbers, strategies, projections, all noise. But beneath the noise, you hear something purer, the rhythm of fear, the pulse of realization. You are no longer in the fight. You are the fight. You are what happens when a man stops needing validation and starts embodying inevitability. Every word you speak lands like a verdict. Every pause is a sentence. The weight of your presence is no longer emotional. It's gravitational. They call it growth. You call it resurrection. You died when they turned away. You were reborn when you stopped caring if they ever turned back. Power isn't loud. It's surgical. It moves in data, timing, and silence. You learn that empires aren't built by shouting. They're built by outlasting every storm until the world mistakes your endurance for destiny. And as they hang on your every word, something inside you remains untouched. The part that still remembers the floor, the darkness, the solitude that raised you sharper than any mentor ever could. When the meeting ends, they stand to shake your hand. You hesitate, not out of arrogance, but awareness. They're not shaking your hand. They're pledging compliance. They finally understand that the one they discarded learned to rebuild from ashes, not for recognition, but for control. As you walk out, you don't look back. The air feels electric, not because you're powerful, but because you've become untouchable. The same world that once condemned you now revolves around your silence. And that silence, more than any word, is what reminds them they never destroyed you. They only made you disappear long enough to become inevitable. The world is quiet now. No applause, no explanations, no noise. You stand in a place that used to hum with chaos. Your name once dragged through dirt, your face once lit by betrayal. But now there's only stillness, the kind that unsettles those who never understood that true power doesn't arrive with noise. It arrives with precision. You've learned the rhythm of control, the art of waiting. They screamed your failures once. Now they whisper your name like a myth they fear might be real. And that silence, they think it means you're gone. They have no idea it's the sound of your crown being forged in their disbelief. You remember the faces that turned away, the laughter, the smirk of someone who thought they'd buried you. Their names used to burn in your memory. Now they mean nothing. You stopped keeping score the moment you realized victory was never about them. It was about the version of you that refused to die. Every sleepless night became a weapon. Every scar, a signature. The pain they gave you wasn't your end. It was your alchemy. You melted every betrayal into armor and walked out of the fire colder, quieter, untouchable. That's what they never understood. You don't announce your comeback when you've evolved beyond needing witness. The same world that mocked you now moves differently when you enter the room. They sense it, the shift, the gravity, the calm authority that follows you like a shadow. They can't explain it, but they feel it. The way your silence commands more than their noise ever did. The way your gaze makes them second guess the lies they once told. You don't seek revenge anymore. You outgrew it. Revenge is for those still proving something. You're past that. What you wear now isn't rage, it's sovereignty. They can't take it, can't touch it, can't name it. It's the quiet knowledge that you don't need to shout to be feared. Once you begged for mercy. Now you give it, or you don't. Once you chased validation. Now validation chases your ghost. They think you changed, but the truth is simpler. You stopped explaining your fire to those who only know smoke. You stopped fighting to be understood in rooms that never deserved your word. And when you withdrew, the noise followed you, hoping to feed again on your light. But all they found was silence, sharp, sacred, absolute. You became the storm they thought had passed. You learned that power is not in what you destroy, but in what you can build without needing approval. You learned that silence is not emptiness, it's control. It's the pause before the sword is drawn, the breath before history shifts. The ones who betrayed you gave you a gift, the chance to rise without witnesses. Now you move through the world like a ghost with purpose. Every step calculated, every word measured, every glance deliberate. You've mastered restraint, the rarest form of strength. And though they still talk, still guess, still fabricate, You don't respond. You don't correct. You don't explain. Because the truth doesn't beg to be believed. It simply stands there existing unbothered. You've become that truth. The quiet storm behind closed doors. The name that doesn't need a stage. The face they can't forget but can never reach again. The crown you wear isn't gold. It's silence, polished by years of endurance, carved from the bones of your former self. And when the world sleeps, you stay awake, not to plan revenge, but to listen to that quiet hum inside your chest that says, you made it out. You were never meant to be loud. You were meant to be legendary in silence.